Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the OKX SpaceX IPO launch party. I'm Melinda here from OKX, here with a great group of commentators and thought leaders keenly following the largest IPO in history. Please join me in welcoming them.
Wow. Hello. Well, there's me and John. What's up, everybody? I'm LG Doucette. I'm one of the hosts of Milk Road and stoked to welcome everybody to this historic event. John and I have been talking about this on the show for months, and I can't believe it's actually here. John, how about you go next?
I am really excited to be here with all of you. This is a historic moment, and I'm really excited to see what happens today. This is going to be really exciting for everybody.
Burb, who are you, man?
Oh man, we're getting philosophical. Listen, my name is Adrian. I'm CryptoBurb. I'm the only CMT charter market technician in Poland. I take pride in that because my mission is actually to help and spread the technical analysis in the quantitative manner, to make it easy, to make it understandable, especially in crypto, because there are so many scammers in the space, and it's just very hard to convince a lot of people that we're not a scam, right? Because there are so many scammers flying all around, and I'm trying to make it in bite-sized knowledge for everybody to come in and understand that it's not as bad as many people say.
Wow. Nice. Mark, how about you, man? I know you were on yesterday, but let's pretend that nobody has seen you yet.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm a content creator. Been in crypto for, 10 plus years now, and just like to take the cool things that people are building on blockchain technology and simplify it so other people can understand it. But now I think I need to install a cooler background because I'm looking at Burb, and that's the coolest background I've seen. So I feel like I need a wall like that behind me. But excited to join everybody today. It's going to be a fun time.
That is pretty sick. I also want to point out that Melinda has color-coded books behind her, which is an A+. I noticed that yesterday on the stream, which is awesome. Okay, and we also have Chris on the show. What's up, Chris?
Hey, what's up? Great to be here. I'm Chris. I lead product marketing for OKX in Europe, and been in the space around 10 years, and really looking forward to the to the conversation. It's going to be good.
Great. Nice to meet you all. And John and I are from Milk Road, where we cover AI, crypto, macro, a lot of different stuff. And like I said, we've been talking about this for a long time. And we podcast every day about this stuff. So if you want to catch it, check out our Milk Road channels as well. We're going to be doing this for a couple hours today, as not only the market goes live, but maybe the stock goes live. We don't know. We'll see what time it goes. But we are going to be talking about SpaceX, OKX, everything that's going on. Guys, I wanted to, and we are going to be welcoming a lot of other guests on the stream as well. So get ready for that. Get ready for a nice little rotation of people and opinions, and maybe, I don't know, a lot of predictions, but we'll definitely be watching as the thing goes down. Guys, the first thing I kind of want to lead off with is the gravity of the event, honestly. Like, this is something that is hard to put into words. It's hard to explain to your grandma, first of all, exactly what SpaceX is and what kind of company it is, but also, like, why, just exactly how much $1 trillion or $2 trillion is for a company to be worth, and also what it means for a company to go public at that valuation. And more importantly, the fact that we can look at price before it actually goes live, right? And that's what's been amazing with OKX. You guys were the first to actually have this kind of pre-market up and running, all thanks to crypto as well. But this is something where never has there been an IPO like this, and never have we been able to look at price and even play around with it before it actually goes live. Melinda, I mean, listen, you and Chris are from OKX. I think maybe you can kind of give us your thoughts on this, and then we can go to Mark and Burb for their thoughts.
Awesome. Well, before I get to my thoughts, I just want to remind everyone that nothing you're about to hear is investment advice or an offer or solicitation to buy, sell, or hold digital assets. Experts' contracts involve leverage, and trading can result in complete loss. This is not a SpaceX security or ownership interest, and not affiliated with or endorsed by SpaceX. Guest views are their own, and not all products we discuss are available in all regions. And with that, we can get into the show. Thanks, LG.
Perfect. Chris, how significant is it to be able to offer something like this to people?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, I live in Berlin, so I kind of come at this with a European perspective, and I think what's really clear is that there is an unprecedented level of retail demand in Europe for this, right? So I've never really seen anything like this before. You go to conferences, you meet up with your friends, you go on social media, and it's really everywhere, right? And I think a big part of that, of course, is the media, right? So the European media, especially the German media, tends to be a little bit more negative, a little bit more skeptical around these things. But I've actually been quite surprised by how, at least in the long term, what I'm reading in the media is quite positive, actually. Like, there is some concerns around the valuation, of course, right? Especially in the short term and, what might happen today. But in the long term, what I'm reading is, they're actually quite positive around the category and around the company. So yeah, it's a really big moment for financial markets, and I think especially in Europe. One of the reasons for this, and I know I'm not the only European here on the call, right? So jump in and correct me, but there's been a shift in Europe over the last, I would say, 10 years, where the number of people who are investing and trading has just skyrocketed. So the infrastructure and also the literacy around financial markets now is at a completely different level than 10 years ago. So you now have this, I think, really interesting moment where European retail is at a level it's never been at before, and you have a mega IPO that is actually actively, going to the European markets and submitting prospectuses and talking to the regulators and making sure that there is direct allocation to European retail, and it comes together to just like a really interesting moment. So yeah, it's a big deal. I'm looking forward to it.
That's great.
Mark, why do you think this day and this moment is so important to investors? Is this more important to crypto investors? Is it important to the general public? Like, what is so significant about this moment and this IPO that we're seeing today?
I think there's only so many times you have a company as exciting as StockX going live, right? So just in terms of that in general, like we were talking yesterday about some of the other companies that are planning to do an IPO soon, and like one of them, there's a few different companies. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but there's some companies that just aren't nearly as exciting as SpaceX, and so I think their technology is exciting. I think Elon Musk as a personality is exciting, and so I think that in general is going to get people just talking about the IPO, and so I think that's a lot of fun. And then it's just talking about how the ease of investing nowadays versus even 5-10 years ago is so dramatically different. And so we're talking about pre-IPO prices right now, and then the actual IPO whenever it goes live today, and that's something that, like, just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people were using brokers. I remember when I got my Fidelity account and just being overwhelmed the first time I went on there, trying to figure out, how do I go about this? How do I buy this? How do I do that? And so it's just the ease of everything now, I think, makes it exciting. And so I think a day like today is just monumental in a lot of ways, because we have a $1 trillion+ IPO. That's unheard of. And then on top of that, again, the ease of use is unheard of. So it's like two things at the same time. And then I think everybody's just excited to see how it plays out. And so everybody has their theories. Everybody, I've read a million different things online, and I think it's just, hey, now it's actual the time. So let's see what happens, and let's see how things go from here. So I think it's just exciting.
Burp, I want to ask you about this. Chris talked about retail investors in Europe being very savvy, and like some of the technology that crypto unlocks in Europe for these products at OKX and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about how digital assets, how crypto has played a role in this pre-market IPO price discovery process for SpaceX, and what's that been like, and why is this so different from historical price discovery on pre-IPO trading for a stock, and just where digital assets sits in that?
Appreciate it. There's been a bunch of very good questions. I'm gonna try to slam them one after another, though. Yeah, long story short, I'm from Poland, right? I'm Polish. Poland takes this strange stance in place where we haven't adopted MiCA yet, right? For whatever reasons, because of interesting political domestic debates, between the politicians. So even though MiCA operates, Poland is kind of like still excluded, so to speak, right, to some extent. Although, so I'm speaking as from the Polish perspective. Polish people, unless they are relocated somewhere else, they don't really have much, I should say, much admission, much access to those markets yet, and that's a shame to a large extent. But for whoever kind of like has an open aim, an open shot there at participating in those, I think this is the first time that we have democratized really and provided a really big access to the world, right, through the means and platforms like OKX, to provide this pre-IPO kind of like a trading, right? And even though, of course, it comes off with big volatility most of the time, and there's this popular understanding of volatility as a means of risk, right, as a measure of risk in the financial markets. For the traditional and standard deviation, for us, the market technicians, it's much more about the ATR, the actual average true range, right? The disparity between the highs and lows. So it was pretty wide. It was pretty hot, in the market. Any market that is hot and that is coming up that is emerging is going to be coming with big volatility, right? So where there is big risk, there is involved. There is big wins involved. There is big losses involved. So any on a comparative level with anything we've seen so far, there's just been, it's like it's like water boiling right under the lid, and the lid just it's almost coming off. It's almost coming off of the vessel, but the hype is crazy, right? That's what I can say. The hype is crazy, and the most frequently searched key phrases on Google Trends recently have been pretty much about the SpaceX IPOs. I'm not surprised, right? Elon Musk himself, I think, gives enough of a reason for people to watch him do things, right? And he's on top of that provided many times fundamentally, through continuity of what he did with X.com, right? Back when he was starting PayPal back in the day and so on. So he's just consistent across his plans, right? So simply because it oscillates around Elon Musk as a person, right? Then there's this headline that is being made right now, potentially, that he's becoming the first trillionaire in history, right? And then we're talking about the IPO of SpaceX itself being, heavily skewed to the upside by the, everything that SpaceX kind of like just operates, and it pretty much opens up the new market, right? The new class of the financial assets, basically. Of course, there has been this cosmic space, asset there, but it wasn't really led by anything particular, right? Until today, until now. So I think it sets the precedence for a huge market growth overall in the means of years and decades. I'm very skeptical myself of the short and medium term. First of all, because we're in the bear market for crypto, the S&P, the Magnificent Seven on top, as we briefly mentioned before the show, is accumulating 36% on top of the market share, right? That is the Magnificent Seven. The top 7 market cap stocks of the S&P 500 accumulate, more than 1/3 of the entire S&P 500 index, right? So there's a huge accumulation and trust being put into AI, which is also why it's so well funded and it's growing very fast. But in the end, the energy crisis, everything that's happening on the outside of the stock market is not really favorable, right? The treasuries, the bond market isn't really strong. The dollar is pretty weak. There has been, of course, a lot of geopolitical tensions coming up. So this is a very hostile environment for safe plays. So I don't see that as a safe play. So anything that is there as an opportunity to me is a shorter term rather than a medium term for now.
Wow. And actually, John, I want to give you a chance to talk about this as well before we move kind of to the next topic, which I want to talk about the cult of Elon and him being a trillionaire. I want to dig into that a little bit. But John, I wanted to ask you, kind of based on what Burb said, what does it take for a company like this to even go public? You know what I mean? In terms of its size, and I know you were talking about earlier about they've had to change some of the rules for something like this, right? And Burb kind of alluded to even the financial conditions are probably not perfect for something like this, but naturally they clearly wanted it to happen.
Yeah, I think there have been a lot of things that have been, let's say, anomalous about SpaceX as a company and about the IPO. But I think just like the way that they've set the fixed price at $135 a share, as opposed to like kind of leaving that range a little bit for the market to find it. And like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs doing the underwriting process and, trying to find where that price point is. And yet we're still seeing it. I think it's 4x oversubscribed in terms of demand. So it's just a lot of capital right now is seeking a way to get an edge, to get exposure to sort of these like new future technologies, the economy of the future, owning a piece of whatever, the economy on Mars, whenever that happens, right? So there's a lot of like speculative capital that's really interested in getting an allocation here. And, this is like this trope, don't bet against Elon Musk. Everyone's trying to bet on Elon Musk in some way. And there's just like a lot of people who are really interested in this. So it's been anomalous in many ways. And I think that the changes that we've seen pre-IPO will probably continue post-IPO in the sense that a lot of the major indices have already signaled willingness to try to like fast track inclusion of SpaceX into their indices. So not only are we going to to see a lot of capital, reallocating in terms of how they want to deal with the new IPO. But once it's added to the index, we're going to see asset managers rebalancing a lot of their portfolios to, bring this huge multi-trillion-dollar market cap stock into that. So there's just going to be a lot of second and third order impacts of this, and it'll continue to be sort of like unprecedented as it continues to get integrated into the overall apparatus of the financial ecosystem here. But yeah, I think it's going to be continuous, like something we'll continue to come back to watch as it plays out, and it comes into a new index and it gets added to a new, et cetera, right? But a lot of the usual norms and considerations have been changed here to sort of speed run this, because it is such a big and unusual IPO moment. But yeah, it's been really exciting to see all that, and the coordination, the collaboration, the innovation, and just like the willingness to be flexible to accommodate this, because there's a huge amount of demand in the market, and they want to meet that, but they also need to do it in a responsible way. But they've been flexible about that as well. So it's just been fascinating to watch this story develop as it's played out here.
Absolutely insane. Let's talk a little bit about our friend Elon. We are talking on his platform. Technically, we're streaming on a platform that is part of SpaceX. So really, we are faithful participants, I would say, in whatever this product is. I don't even know what kind of product it is, man, because there's a social platform, there's AI, there's rockets, there's like a million different business lines involved in this company. But the other thing that seemed just absolutely unbelievable and almost impossible a few years back is that anybody would ever become a trillionaire, right? And now, and it sounds, honestly, somebody on their microphone sounds like there's an alien spaceship coming to take them away right now. I don't know who that is. Or that there's a SpaceX launch about to happen behind them. Okay, thank you. I don't know who that was. Anyways, something like, even if you go back 5-6 years ago, the idea that a company would be $1 trillion was wild. And now you have a person who's $1 trillion, definitely one of the most famous people in the world, and also one of the people, especially look at all the tech CEOs and founders, who is quite polarizing and has definitely a strong following of people. Yes, I would love to hear, Chris, maybe let's start over across the ocean. How do people feel about Elon over there?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think it's super interesting. When I read about Elon and the IPO with a kind of US lens, it's very much around his capabilities as an innovator, as his track record, this being kind of a really important moment in financial markets. But in Europe, he's quite a divisive figure, right? Especially because he's come out in favor of right-wing parties in the past. So here, I would say there really isn't a cult of Elon in Europe. It's actually despite of it. And I think that's like a really interesting thing that we're seeing in Europe, where there's like a really obvious tension between, on the one hand, Europeans respecting his capabilities and knowing what he's capable of, on the other hand, being very much against, the kind of political leanings that he's expressed, whether it's in Germany or in France or in the UK. So that's been really interesting to kind of see this huge retail demand for this IPO. And on the other hand, also knowing that many people are not a big fan of Elon. I remember reading that his Tesla sales in Europe are down month over month for 12 months in a row. And it used to be a really popular brand here in Europe. And I think that's an interesting kind of quantifiable way of looking at how Elon is perceived in Europe. And I think generally, if you look at the way that the European media is talking about it, is that it's really about Elon, right? This is him, right? It's his company. And, I thought it was interesting in his S1 filing, or in the S1 filing, they mentioned there's no key man risk, but they also mentioned that he is the driving force behind the growth. And I think that's a really interesting kind of dynamic that, I think kind of speaks to one of the contradictions at the heart of the IPO. On the one hand, you really need him, right? He's the one with the capabilities. On the other hand, at least in Europe, he's not very well regarded, at least at the moment.
That I just want to say that is not that is a sentiment that is shared in other places as well. That even up in Canada today, in the Globe and Mail, which is a well-known publication, has been around for a long time, they put out an article saying SpaceX is set to make Elon Musk the first trillionaire. Here's how to hate him properly. They put out a thing like that. I don't know what that's designed to do. Clearly trying to get clicks, but I thought that was interesting. I was like, wow, they've been working on that one for a couple months. Mark, over to you, man. How do you feel about this kind of cult of Elon and how this is this is, how much it propels kind of the business, kind of around what Chris says.
Yeah, I think in the last, the last year, I think we reached a just the mountaintop of hate towards Elon, and then I think he kind of withdrew himself from some of the political craziness and kind of said, "Hey, this isn't really helping Tesla. It's not really helping my businesses in any way, and I don't think I'm actually making change. So I think I'm out." And I think that's starting to kind of calm things down. I think then from there, Elon's always that person where, yeah, he's probably not the guy that you want to go and grab a beer with, but at the same time, his technology has always been something that's helped people out. So when your first time you see a Cybertruck, it's kind of like, oh, wow, that's crazy looking. But the first time you're inside of a Cybertruck and you drive inside one, you're like, oh, actually, this is pretty awesome. And so I think that's a lot of his technology. The first time you're on a plane and you have Starlink and you try that out. The first time you're at a friend's house who lives in a rural area and they have Starlink and you see that, like, it's all these different times that you use his technology, you realize kind of how genius he is. And so I think there's a lot of people that, yeah, they don't look at Elon and say, yeah, he'd be the kind of guy I'd want to be friends with, but you kind of respect his genius at the same time. And so I think, same thing being in California, I see the SpaceX launches all the time. And it's one of the first questions when people move out here and they see one for the first time. They're like, what is that? And you're like, oh, that's a SpaceX launch. Again, it's always bringing up different conversations. He's always somebody that you're always going to end up talking about him for some reason. But at the same time, no matter what your take is on him, there's going to be a time that you use one of his products, you enjoy it. And so I think while he is very divisive, it's like you kind of can't hate him because you need him. So I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic, and I think that's what again makes a day like today so exciting.
Great thoughts. Let's jump really quick to our newcomer who's joining us, maybe from a Tesla, maybe from an Elon vehicle. Anthony Pompliano, welcome, sir. Welcome to the show. We all know who you are, but you can always give us an intro. But definitely, what we want most is kind of your thoughts on this historic day and SpaceX finally going live, or at least going public.
If you look at all the data of big IPOs, horrible decision to own the shares. If you look at the valuation of SpaceX, I think a lot of people have some questions or potential concerns. So if people tell me that they're not interested in the IPO or they're not buying, rational people, it makes sense, right? But again, Elon Musk, I would not bet against that man. I think everyone who's bet against him regrets it. And if you go and you look at Tesla for a long time, people said it was overvalued. It wasn't going to be successful. They were burning too much cash. They couldn't build an American car company. Things been up 25,000% since his IPO. The compounding annual growth rate for the last 15 years over 40%. So this is a classic, the mathematicians, the people looking at their spreadsheets versus the people who are willing to bet on the greatest entrepreneur of our lifetime. And doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. Doesn't mean that, it's not going to be some bumps along the road. But I do think that it's going to be pretty interesting to see the people who kind of refrain.
Pomp, Elon made a very public deal to fund some compute to back Anthropic and their kind of like frontier models and those products there. There's been this long-standing contest rivalry between Elon and Sam Altman. Talk to me a little bit about this three-way rivalry we're seeing between SpaceX and their alliance with Anthropic versus OpenAI. How are you seeing this play out? Who's leading in this horse race? Is this all just a big power game? What are you seeing here in that landscape?
Well, I think Elon's got two motives, right? One is obviously him and Sam probably don't see eye to eye, maybe is the best way to put it. But then second of all, he needed a bigger addressable market to help with the valuation. And so if you look at that total addressable market slide, space launch, Starlink, all these different things had pretty good markets, but not 20, 50, $100 trillion. And so by going after enterprise AI, obviously that really significantly increases the addressable market. Second of all is I don't know if there's really that big of a competition. Anthropic is kicking OpenAI's butt right now. It doesn't mean that OpenAI is zero or is not going to be able to launch their own products or services and innovate. But I think that if you look at revenue growth, if you look at total valuation, if you look at growth rates, Anthropic is the clear winner in the market at the moment. The beauty though of capitalism and private markets is the fight's not over, right? And so I think that whether it's XAI, SpaceX, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI, I think really who's the winner? It's the consumer. We get to watch these guys all fight it out and subsidize our token costs. So I hope that they keep burning as much cash as possible so we all get the lowest compute cost possible until they decide not to do that anymore.
Anthony, do you think we'll see consumers splitting their interest between different Musk entities?
I don't think there's going to be different Musk entities at the end of the day. I very publicly said I bought Tesla shares, and big reason for that is I think that humanoid robots is going to be big. I think that all of the AI machine learning stuff they have is going to be big. But more importantly is I think these companies are going to get merged together. Dan Ives believes it's going to happen. I think he's got like a 50% chance or something by the end of 2027. So pretty short term here. I don't know if it happens fast or not, but I do think it's going to end up with him consolidating these businesses because they're all really kind of solving different parts of the same problem. I've got to go in like 2 minutes, by the way.
Perfect. Yeah.
So Anthony, when we see this emerging Elon Corp, right? Do you think that they're going to run into regulatory issues if they try to do that, or you think that's going to go through? I mean, that seems like it's going to be like a $10+ trillion company at the minimum here. How do you think about that in terms of fairness in the market, especially in light of this conversation we've seen of Bernie Sanders calling for, nationalizing some of these companies? Like, walk us through how you see that playing out in terms of actually becoming a reality.
I'm sure Bernie Sanders is a nice guy, but best of luck to him with his plan. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of Elon, the pay package I think is the best example. The courts, the regulators, a bunch of people try to put their roadblocks up, but he was able to successfully get it done and get the shareholder vote done twice. And so I don't see any sort of issue there.
Pomp, we appreciate you.
Great to see you guys.
Some thoughts on this. Thanks for being here, sir.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Thanks, Anthony. That was Anthony Pompliano. Wanted to say another welcome to everyone who's joined us. I understand we have about a large viewership right now from OKX's own in-app social media platform, Orbit. So welcome to everyone joining from Orbit.
Oh, great. Well, welcome everybody. That's great. And I listen, Pomp joining from the cab, from the Uber. That's just perfect. And I don't know if that was a Tesla or not, or if maybe it was an FSD as well. I guess they don't have that in New York yet, but maybe he was driven around by it and there's no driver there. Somebody in the chat said, ask the taxi driver what they think, ask the Uber driver what they think, and what if they have a dashboard with OKX up on it. Maybe, you don't know. Maybe they've got that. Maybe they got a whole iPad there ready to go. Okay, I have a question for Mark. I just want to go back to something you said before we had Anthony join, which you said, I don't know if I'd want to have a beer with Elon. If you gotta go out to dinner with either Elon, Sam Altman, or Dario from Anthropic, who you're choosing?
Oh, I'd probably go with Elon because I feel like I use his products the most. But next up, I mean, I'd have to chat about Claude. I mean, I love Claude, so I'd want to know all the different ways that I can utilize Claude and what I'm not doing currently. But yeah, I mean, Elon is somebody where I don't know if I'd say more than 4 words. Like, I just want to wind him up and kind of let him go and see where he takes that conversation, because Elon's mind is a landscape that I don't think any of us understand. I think my first question would be, how did you name your son? That would be that is just.
Wait, what? Doesn't he have a bunch now, Mark?
Yeah, there's
like
one kid.
XI,
the one with Grimes, the kid he had with Grimes. Yeah, that's a wild one. Yeah,
no idea how to pronounce that name, but yeah, I would have many questions for him, but I would just kind of try to wind him up and let him go, see where he takes it.
It'd be a wild night. I feel like the dinner would either be only 3 minutes long, or you'd be out for hours doing a bunch of fun stuff. So it's kind of hard to say. Guys, I think that's also kind of a good jumping off point where we're talking about Elon, to also talk about, that this is not the only historic IPO happening this year. There's a lot more coming down the pipe. And like I mentioned, Sam Altman and Dario are also set to bring their companies public. Obviously going to be the first time for them, and not like Elon, who also has another giant company that's currently there. But maybe we can very quickly, Bird, but maybe we'll throw to you. How do you compare something like the SpaceX IPO to the other 2 IPOs coming up?
Oh man, I mean, how do you compare it? Of course, you compare it with whatever numbers you can find all over the internet. And that comes, of course, with the race against, the revenue. And when you compare, for instance, the actual valuation on NVIDIA, for instance, and the annual revenue that they do, right? And you compare those new pre-IPO / new IPOs coming up, those mega IPOs coming up, well, there is a big discrepancy, right? And so if you were to compare that on a very simple, again, comparative analysis, you're not going to arrive at the healthy numbers. That's one. Another thing is that, you probably want to compare, like, speaking of Elon, speaking of Dario, speaking of OpenAI, you do want to get a sense of, the people behind it. And by people behind it, I don't necessarily only mean the company itself, right? But I mean everybody who is beside the company. That is the people, right? That is the users. And see, this may sound and seem like a cliche, right? But community comes first, man. I mean, we're dragging this crypto native, I should say, way of thinking, and I think it's just been absorbed for the means of AI. Even the word token itself, right? If it wasn't for the AI tokens, I think the token itself would have been banned already, because there are so many failed token launches, basically, right? That it immediately gained this pejorative, negative meaning and a sound in a lot of people's mouths, right? So to an extent, it was almost forbidden word. But AI kind of like has come up with some help to it. So all I mean is that the community and the people shape the product, right? If you come up with the product first, well, we can only name maybe those 3, 4, 5, 10 companies that can actually do it, right? We're talking Steve Jobs type of, thought process behind it. So, I mean, I know your next move. I don't have to ask you questions. You're going to follow me because I know what you want, right? So unless you are that type of a person, you are, well, I don't want to say doomed, but your biggest victory, his biggest success is by listening to the community, right? And I think this is a big lessons learned, coming off of crypto market, that if you can have the greatest product, right? You can have the greatest product. You can keep coming up with those brand new releases. But if you mistreat your community, you have no way, like you have no reason to come back tomorrow, right? And we've seen that many, many times with the biggest names. Some of those names kind of like came up and popped up on the chat already. But, that is what I mean. Like, if you have big, wide enough user base, be it for SpaceX, just like we were speaking about how broad the market niche is, for Elon. Then, of course, comparing that with the very fastly booming and very fastly absorbing by the mainstream, AI aspects coming off of Dario, I think that it's getting bigger, right? It's getting bigger in terms of it's going big very fast. So the community growth, the adoption, again, all of that is just accelerating very fast. If you were to compare that with the dot-com bubble, what used to take years, now it's taking months. All right, thanks to technology, even now thanks to AI. And all I mean is that people are getting easier and easier access. And in the end, by the end of the day, those people who are coming into the market from the street, they are coming into the market right now to buy the shares of the insider selling. Well, if you don't have a wide enough market base, right, the user base, well, there's not going to be enough of success, so to speak. So that same type of IPOs that some other smaller AI providers, for instance, would do, I don't see them reaching the same type of a success, for instance, that Anthropic would do, right? OpenAI, of course, with Sam Altman, has been quite controversial with the big beef coming off between Elon Musk and him, right? And then there was like the whole legal process going between, making it a private company, the public company that Elon set up. And so there is some controversy. Controversy builds the interest builds demand, and so on. So there is some demand too, right? But perhaps if I were to guess it, it's just going to be much more about this bargain hunters and then kind of like speculators coming into the play for the anticipating volatility and some shorter, medium-term games, right? I would be definitely, if I were to rank it, right, I would put SpaceX first. I would put, Anthropic second and OpenAI third. If I were to rank it in terms of my likeness, like to the way how I like it, how I anticipate many people would like it. But again, most of the IPOs, and I wanted to resound very strongly, is that most of the IPOs come into the street. They are already 2 to 3x overvalued by the definition most of the time, right? Of course, there are some outliers, but anybody who expects, right, to come, like being the street, being the retail market, the retail capital, to buy $5, $20, $100 worth of SpaceX shares right now and be a millionaire by the end of the year, that's probably not going to happen, right? As a matter of fact, again, knowing of all the energy crisis all beside this, those conditions are likely not going to be long lasting for this particular year, right? So there is probably some valley coming up and bigger runs ahead next year.
Thank you, Burb. We've got a new guest who's joined the studio. Chris, I'll let you intro him.
Hey, yeah, we've got Haider. We've got Haider on the call.
I don't really need an introduction.
Oh, wow. Okay, he needs no introduction.
No,
Well,
I'm
Haider,
not that special. I don't think I warrant an introduction. I can just
no. Everybody on the stream is special. Go ahead, Chris.
We've got the wonderful Haider Rafiq on the call, who's managing partner and CMO at OKX. Hey, Haider, how
Everybody.
you doing?
Well, hopefully my connection's going to be okay. I know I joined last night and it was a bit choppy, but it sounds like you guys are having incredible fun. I just got a text from Pomp. He said he was here for a few minutes and you guys were doing great. So this is exciting.
Haider, he joined from like an Uber or something like that. Like he was live on the streets. Like he was on his way somewhere. That guy just does not stop. But he did join for a few minutes, and it was great to have him. But every guest today on the show is special, and we're very excited to have you. And just for another quick intro, Haider is the global managing partner at OKX. And what we really wanted, we're excited to have you here. Obviously, it's a big deal for SpaceX and for you guys as well, being first to market with this type of product as well. What I want to understand from you, Haider, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit during the stream, but we want to hear from you, is the investor impact to have access to a market like this, right? And how much investor interest in stuff like this is changing as these types of products become available. There's not really a question there.
Look,
it's like a statement, and then you could talk.
If you look back 6-7 weeks ago, I think I was on a panel in Miami. I believe it was Consensus Miami, and I was with the CEO Carlos of Securitize. And I think backstage we were talking about our very purist view on tokenized equities, and we both agreed that the right way to bring equities to be fractional, tradable 24/7, completely token on chain should be issuer-based, tokenized equities, and that these wrappers, we should be sort of cautious. They're not, you don't really own the underlying asset, and people are unable to make that differentiation. And I think there's, we were discussing how we need to do work in making sure the market understands this, and we should all focus on issuer-based. Now, that was my and Carlos' point of view. I tweeted this earlier. It doesn't really matter what an individual point of view is anymore. The market tells you what they want. And it's the market that decides what we should and shouldn't focus on. The reality is the wrappers have demand. The perps have demand. And the reasons are very simple. And so therefore, my point of view in the last few weeks has changed. When I look at how these things are performing and the demand that's being generated, you look at states who don't have a brokerage account or don't have access to US equities. What do they do to get exposure? They perhaps have the same level of excitement the 6 of us have in the room. Everyone on X is talking about this IPO. If you're in Eastern Europe, if you're in Latin America, if you're in parts of Asia Pacific, what do? You just have FOMO? It's not just about price discovery with perps anymore. I think this is exposure that inevitably because they don't have access to the direct asset. Frankly, I don't either. I missed the window on Fidelity. And so I have my limit order set up, but I don't think it's going to get filled. I ambitiously put it at $140. I'd be very lucky if it gets filled at 140. So I think when you look at these perps markets now, especially on the tokenized equity side, I think they're demonstrating a really clear retail and trader behavior. People who are on the sidelines don't want to remain on the sidelines anymore. And they look at this instrument as a way to participate and get exposure. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the exciting equation is, in the current NASDAQ NYSE setup, New York Stock Exchange setup, you have very little access to pre-market activity. If you're an active trader on Fidelity, you can actually get access to pre-market and after hours. So I think with crypto folks, it's very different. We are used to 24/7 trading. And so you're seeing a lot of people come into the market who are like, look, we're not going to wait till this thing gets listed. We're actually going to want to price it and see the upside or trade it before it even gets listed. And I think that's very exciting for them. Now, say this thing goes live on NASDAQ at 11 a.m. Eastern. Guess what? 2 hours later, the market closes for most people. What a buzzkill. The largest IPO in US equities market, and it's going to go trade for 2 hours before it moves over to after hours, where the markets, as we all know, are extremely, extremely thin. So the question for me is, where will the liquidity go? Will it go to after hours trading on NASDAQ and brokerage accounts? Or will it actually go back to the perps markets? And I think that's what I want to witness and see today. I'm really excited to see what ends up happening.
Haider, you talked about this new technology products unlock access, and you talk about how this improves some of these trading opportunities. Just a little bit more about Xperps and how this works, because I think that a lot of investors are really curious to learn more about these products, but there's still things that are a bit, esoteric to some people who may not know a whole lot about these things. Talk to us about what improves this offers over the old way of doing this, like, as you said, like pre-IPO markets or after hours markets, and some of the benefits of having Xperps live as a product.
So Xperps in an onshore product, that may be internal language, but the way it is, our Xperps market today is predominantly offshore in markets that are considered self-regulated. And that's where these perps markets have been built up. Now, on our platform, we follow our regulation. We follow the Bank Secrecy Act. Therefore, every customer has to be KYC'd on the platform. I hate to say it, but I don't know how Hyperliquid does it, because they've got all these instruments out there. There's no KYC. I guess the lesson for me in life working in this industry close to 10 years is the rules are not the same for everyone. It's just unfortunate. Department of Justice will look at two companies very differently, and that's very unfortunate because it should be a level playing field. Xperps is our regulated product in Europe. We have a MiFID license that allows us to put this product out there. So the comfort that people should have is that it is completely regulated in Europe. The risk is really well managed, and we wanted to continue to bring our perpetual markets. In this case, we're calling them Xperps because they expire after 5 years. I can't imagine anyone holds a perps open position for 5 years, let alone 50 days or what have you. But that's how we're looking at the market. We're looking at what we learned from 24/7 in self-regulated markets where there's a lot, they're very liquid markets. How can we bring those systems now, work with regulators, and bring them onshore so that people can have more confidence that there's going to be stability in these markets and some level of protection for them. So I think over the next 12 months, 18 months, you should expect OKX will continue to scale up its onshore regulated derivatives product, perps products, hopefully soon in the United States.
Thank you, Haider. We'll come back to you in a second. We're welcoming another participant to the stream who was on for the marathon from yesterday. Nick, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going?
How you feeling today?
Yeah, I thought it was market open, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's when I'll join. But I guess we're also waiting for whenever it's not. Haider has a lot of confidence of when this trading is going to start from the sound of things, whereas I'm like, isn't it kind of up in the air at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
I have confidence that it will start and it's going to halt at the same time.
Well, I want to
halt.
Haider, I want to
go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I was I was gonna ask, I was gonna ask another question about this, right? Like digital assets, I think has gotten associated a lot just with like memes and so forth, but there is still a lot of innovation, powerful innovation, and financial tools coming out of digital assets and out of crypto. Talk to me a little bit more about some of these innovations, why it's so important to continue to develop these things, and why these are unique products that traditional Wall Street is not really able to bring to market or to do this kind of innovation on.
I think there's a lot of bureaucracy in legacy systems. I think maybe there's too many lawyers, there's too many policymakers, and they're debating each other. And as a result of it, if you're a builder, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a developer, motivated to sandbox of regulated markets, so you end up going offshore. And Hyperliquid's a great example of that. They ended up starting their company in Singapore because they felt they could move faster, and credit to them, they've done that phenomenally well. When we work with traditional finance, it becomes pretty apparent these are really large teams. They're large companies. Consensus is what kills all great ideas, or at least slows them down. And I think that's why you're seeing these large old companies, brand names that we're familiar with, move really slow. They're in acquisition mode. They're in partnership mode. You look at us, we've done a pretty significant partnership with Intercontinental Exchange and New York Stock Exchange. They sit on our board today, and we're helping them bring their financial instruments on chain. But we know that's going to take time because we've got to do it in the regulated way. And to move SEC, to move a lot of this bureaucracy in the middle, I think will take time. And as a result of it, you're basically seeing these new markets develop out of desperation, which is an example of what you're seeing in the perps markets activity. So I think for crypto in general, my personal point of view is memes were good for us, but also bad for us. DeFi was good for us, but also bad for us. ICOs good for us, but also bad for us. The good side was only the fact that we were able to build these systems out, stress test them, scale them. But the bad was there's a lot of retail that actually lost money chasing these things. I see tokenization as a way for crypto and blockchain industry to redeem themselves, to try and bring some goodness to the world. Because once you take a 70 trillion US equities market and you bring it on chain, you make it accessible to the rest of the world. It's fractionally traded. Everyone can, participate. That 70 trillion market can go to 100 trillion, can go to 150 trillion. And I think that's great for the American economy. It's great for our capital markets. So I think you're going to see a lot of legacy crypto companies lean into that. And I personally think that's a great way for us to redeem ourselves from some of the damage we might have done in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the stuff with the perpetual side of things is a lot and I don't know, maybe you guys actually see this associated with like market makers and things like that, or institutions. What's the breakdown when you're looking at the perpetuals market itself in terms of day-to-day investors versus like actual institutions participating in this market? And I guess I wouldn't even qualify market makers within it because they're just offering liquidity for the most part, like institutions that are actually taking a position. What is the breakdown of that? And because it seems like the goal, and you'd said this yesterday, is that there's a huge international market that doesn't get access to trade these domestic markets. But do you see the same thing happening with institutions using these platforms, or is that mostly coming from consumers? I don't know if you heard that.
I think we've lost.
Seems like it was for you, Hyder, right?
Yeah.
I lost the last part of the question, Nick. Could you repeat that?
Oh, yeah. So, well, basically, you were discussing how the perpetuals market opens up a new opportunity for international people to invest. What's the split that you're seeing from like institutional demand versus consumer demand for these products? Because I feel like when we see this, a lot of what we think about is like degenerate speculation versus leverage that is beneficial for potential institutions as well. And I'm curious what that actually looks like.
I think right now you should expect that it's mostly retail and retail traders. I think institutions are looking at it more from a price discovery standpoint, but are they participating the same way they have historically in spot markets or other markets? No. I think this is still in very much an experimentation stage, I would say. You can see that by the amount of trading volumes. I think I just saw a CoinDesk screenshot maybe 20, 30 minutes ago on X where they compare the trading volume of SpaceX perps across different platforms. And you can see that, it's not as significant as, say, your typical spot markets. So will institutions onboard eventually? I think the likelihood will be more in our regulated markets like Europe, UAE, Singapore, what have you, and hopefully eventually in the US. But I think it takes that. I don't think they're ready to come in just yet, and we're not seeing that interest. But there's certainly, you see the JP Morgan screenshot on X, right? They've got Hyperliquid dashboard there along with Bloomberg terminal. So clearly they're using it as to see, for price discovery, but I don't see anything beyond that yet.
I mean,
Hyder, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Nick. Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to comment. I mean, it's clearly a breakthrough. I just remember years ago, if you looked at these private markets, I mean, they were just so wildly illiquid, and then a switch flipped basically overnight at some point in the past, I don't know, even year, basically. And now you have this just like moving markets where even though the volume, you look at it and you're like, oh, the daily volume of this is $1 million or whatever the number is. It depends on the market and which sort of asset that you're looking at. But I'm like, for you to get a placement on something like Facebook stock back in the day prior to IPO, you were basically going to a broker who was trying to cut a deal, and you had some in-between situation going on. And I think, obviously, if you're trying to get liquidity as an internal person who owns shares of Anthropic or whatever, then you're still going to need to go through some sort of broker like that. But it's a pretty incredible product for those that want to be able to trade it at the moment. But it's also clear that there's a significant premium happening in this perpetuals market right now, where it's like, oh yeah, the VCs just invested at 1.2 trillion, but the Anthropic perps are trading at 1.8 trillion. So that would have been the opportunity. But so that it's not like it killed that market completely. I just think that it's
I think you're right. I think 3 years from now, if there's a company looking to go public, one would argue, do they actually really need underwriters to price them and banks and what have you? Or are they going to look at these perp markets or pre-markets? And maybe if you're a company with a market cap of X billion, you maybe not even seek a private round to price yourself. Maybe you just go in these early markets like perps, pre-IPO perps, and you see where the retail interest is. And by the way, you actually get one additional upside you don't get through the traditional IPO process, which is when you bring in retail at an early stage, you kind of end up building your own community. And I think that's really great for the stock price. And I think it's also going to change the model on how companies look at investor relations post IPO, because if you've got predominantly retail carrying your float, and you have less dependency on really large hedge funds and institutions to carry your stock, your model and the way you think about these things will change. What I'd like to see in 3 to 5 years is everything gets disrupted for the good. There's very minimal intermediaries. You can look at the different layers of clearing and equities, and you'll notice there's a lot of legacy burden in these systems. You just look at DTCC. They're such a legacy company. They kind of remind me of ICANN for internet. I always scratch my head. I'm like, how come ICANN's responsible for TLDs in all domains? But they are. And I think you'll see a lot of innovation primarily by crypto builders who will go and try to challenge these systems. And I'm certain DTCC will also try to, innovate and modernize their systems. So 3-5 years from now, I wonder if companies will actually use underwriters. I think this model will prove very attractive for them. And I think the role of intermediaries in the middle, it has an expiration date set on it.
One last question on this for you, which is, we discussed this before, and you were talking about sort of, I guess we can call them RWAs, basically, tokenized shares that are on chain, and how that compares to this perpetuals market. And after this all plays out, what do you think the demand actually is for RWAs associated with tokenized stocks versus perpetuals? And for the consumer, does it even matter, basically? Do they even care about that? Because I know for myself, when I go to Schwab to buy a stock, I don't give a crap where the stock is, frankly. Like, I don't care where the actual certificate is sitting. I'm never going to see that thing. It would be cool to own one. I'd like to have it framed in my apartment, but I don't like that's sitting in a vault somewhere. So, like, what's the value of that as it applies to some of these things where the legacy stuff that you're talking about is in many ways tied to some of the stuff like that, where a certificate is sitting in a vault somewhere?
I'm not sure the new retail really cares. And I think you and I were talking about the user experience yesterday, and the lack thereof on new prediction markets, where it's just like a simple, very simple UI. But when you look at younger people, they just want exposure, and they want it now, and they want it instantly. And I gave this example a while back. We live in the age of internet and devices and on-demand apps. You can order a hamburger through Uber Eats at any time. But guess what? You can't place a trade in US equities markets anytime. So I think young people care less about sort of like the underlying asset. What we're seeing as a signal is they just want to participate, and they want to do it on their terms. They want to do it at the time they want to do it. And by the way, they want it extremely fractional. And I think that's what's going to drive the trend. So personally, I don't think a lot of the long tail retail will notice or see the difference. Sometimes it's annoying. For example, Nick, I'm sure you remember, there was Bitcoin, and then there was BCH, and then there was BSV. And by the way, BCH and BSV just conveniently use the same logo of Bitcoin. And I tell you, I have a lot of friends who ended up buying BCH and that was the cheaper version of Bitcoin. Or they thought it's a cheaper Bitcoin. So you have to understand, people outside our echo chamber, outside of crypto Twitter, outside our circles, they're very new to this stuff. And for them, it's really just a visual decision. They don't really consider all the underlying nuances that you and I do.
Hyder, to bring this back to SpaceX, I think a moment like this, where you have an IPO that draws so much attention, so much demand, brings a lot of, just like you said, self-directed or retail investor interest, and it becomes a moment or an opportunity for education. Talk to me about what is important for people to learn in this moment if they're here to learn about SpaceX, how to get exposure, and maybe learning about some of these new products for the first time. Talk to me about that process. Where should people start? What should they know? And just, walk me through, what you would say to somebody who is coming into this, and just like you said, not from this bubble that we're all in, but is learning about some of these things for the first time. What would you say to them?
So if you asked me this question 3 years, 4 years ago, I would have said, go to any of our websites, like go to, look at any trading venue, large trading venue, and all of us have educational materials. We have like a blog, and we've got sort of an academy product, and you can start there, and that's a good way to get going. Now, I would answer that question very differently. I rely a lot on language models. I'll upload a lot of my investment activity on ChatGPT or Claude. And as part of that, I use those products to teach me different things. And I think naturally younger people are going there as their first touch point to learn anything. And by the way, these language models are incredibly, incredibly smart and useful, and they can articulate in a way that no content writer can do it at that scale. And once they know the context and they're building the context, over time, it just gets better and better and better and better. So I think my personal feeling is all young people are actually using ChatGPT or Claude to do most of their learning, because they can format it the way they like. They can read and digest it however they like. The applications itself will help them do it. Why read a boring blog and scroll around and what have you, when you can actually do it in the format that you like the best? I think that's one. And the second is, I kid you not, I still fall in the trap of doomsday scrolling. And if you're on Instagram and you like talking about SpaceX IPO, then suddenly your algo is like, feeding you a lot more of that content. And I learned how to make a steak on Instagram or TikTok during COVID, and I made a good steak. And I think a lot of that learning is happening because people visually are able to see people describe it, show them how it works. So I think between AI models and doomsday scrolling, I think that's a new way of learning for younger and older people. What do you guys think?
I personally completely agree. I was in the I was concerned last night listening to literal doctors in the ER talk about their answers that they're getting on ChatGPT, where I'm like, what, are we serious right now? And I think that literally it's being used across all industry at this point. That's kind of become the default sort of search engine for everything. And people do want as well in the product and the finance side of things. I also agree that the products that people are looking for, they're looking for a lot of simplicity. I think what's also weird about a lot of these things right now is a lot of it is operating in the biggest difficulty with a lot of this innovation is it's happening in the face of restriction or regulation, basically. And I think that that's where kind of all of the information is moving so much faster than the regulatory frameworks that exist, that it makes it quite difficult. And a lot of the on-chain innovation and everything else that's happening also makes it incredibly difficult. And so right now, like, it seems like the modern day version of Uber, when Uber came out and they were just like, yeah, we don't care about the regulatory side of things. We're just going to send you a car. Screw it. This is the same thing that's happening with something like perps, where you mentioned like Hyperlick, where it's like, yeah, just turn on a VPN and boom, that solves our regulatory problem. And it's like, well, maybe not, but I think that's the thing that's like super cool about all this is we're operating at the speed of innovation and the market is operating there, and it's taking a long time for the regulatory side to catch up. And it's also kind of just proving that, man, that seems to be where a lot of the just friction is. And I don't know, like there's a Consumer Protection Bureau. Is that even relevant anymore? Like, do any of these things, or is it just, yeah, I guess we're moving towards, as I see all this stuff and all these products happening, I'm like, wow, this used to be literally just the whole conversation you would have at like conferences and places would be like, well, we can't do that because it's not legal. It's not regulated. It's not whatever. And now people are just like, well, we can operate in this. They're finding new gray areas, I guess. And I don't know, maybe you can even speak to whether or not we're seeing some of that. Like, where does innovation for a company like OKX, like where are you guys able to operate when it comes to some of these different new products?
So Nick, the unfortunate part of being successful and being big is that you become quite more conservative. You have to. And it's actually a great opportunity for young upstarts, because if they want to compete, I'm not suggesting they need to break regulation or break laws, but oftentimes they'll find a gray area where they can innovate, where a bigger company like OKX is just not willing to take the risk. So debated hyperliquid models internally, but we just personally we were just not comfortable with it, and so we tabled it. I think you're gonna see young companies take more risk. That's just inevitable, and so there's this cycle of innovation, right? You innovate, you become really big, you start taking less risk because you just can't for multiple reasons, and then you have new incumbents come in and take that risk and start grabbing market share. So I think you're gonna see Hyperliquid build up quite significantly because they've found their stride. will OKX be able to compete with them at that level? No, we're just not going to break the law the way, we're completely different in that sense. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in investment in compliance. We KYC the heck out of everyone. So long term, I hope that we can continue to innovate more responsibly. Let's see. The jury's still out.
Well, with that, folks, I want to turn very quickly to the chart because we are live. The cross happened much earlier than expected, and it looks like SpaceX is now imminently about to be trading. Can we pull up the OKX perps chart, please? Would love to look at the price action.
I'm like, this chart's pretty static, if I'm going to be honest.
That chart's pretty static. We have news from the floor that it should be coming imminently.
But 20%, it sounds like, is what it says. SpaceX shares indicated to open 29% higher. It looks like it's literally like pegged borderline to the perps price, or like pretty damn close.
Yeah, so did we see convergence? Where are we with the perps market?
Well, right now looks like 176. If you took 135 times 1.2, you'd end up at 162. So there's some sort of gap in between there, 162 to 176. That's a pretty wide range. I'm assuming once we actually see the tick show up on here, like on a Yahoo Finance or whatever, maybe there's like a spontaneous convergence. I'm curious. This is more of a technical question because I don't understand how market making operates on like perpetual sites. I'm assuming it's just like a floating price, and you just have people setting bids and asks. Is that just programmatic, and there's someone out there who's just setting whatever bid ask that they're willing to do? And like it, who's the person that's actually actively doing that? Like, who's setting the market making inside of these?
Chris, I think this is a question for you here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? Like, I think it's I think there's kind of a combination of internal and external, and then there's of course kind of different dynamics that are playing a role here, right? In terms of whether people are kind of going long, whether short, leverage, right? So there's a lot at play here. I think it's super interesting to see what's happening to the chart. We are anticipating, and this is happening in the background now, that we're going to be launching X-Perps in Europe imminently. And the
market is live, is my understanding. Like the stock is
actually
quoting.
live in Europe already. Yeah. Okay, that's great.
No, sorry, the stock market, not the X-Perp.
Yeah. So in Europe, we anticipate being live within 10-20 minutes of the actual markets being traded, and that's going to be super interesting because obviously the market was massively oversubscribed, the IPO, right? So X-Perps, I think, give an opportunity for people to actually get exposure to the movement without necessarily having to get into the IPO itself. It's going to be really interesting as well to see what happens with the shorts, right? So with X-Perps, you can go long, but you can also go short with leverage. And if we are seeing a pop, which it seems like we might be, 29% above IPO price, then I wonder whether people are going to take the other side of that, right? So cool to be live in one of the most important moments in maybe not financial history.
Yeah, I mean, imagine what the scene is like down at NASDAQ right now. I imagine that orders are flooding in, demand is surging. We're seeing a lot of negotiating happening, people with their allocations, maybe some trying to get exit liquidity from retail. Probably a bit of a gong show down there. I would imagine it's terribly busy. How quickly do you think we're going to see or validate if we did see price convergence between the perps market and what is going live right now?
Yeah, I
see Wall Street has just joined us.
Yeah, I mean, key to get your thoughts on this, right? But I really don't think it's going to take long at all. I think the market's going to be very efficient, very quick. But yeah, it's guesswork at the moment. But if I had to guess, I would say it's not going to take long at all.
What's up, Wall Street Bets? If you're there. Maybe
Suddenly
okay.
The community of Wall Street Bets responds.
It's a couple million people together on one stream. That's what it is, a collective voice.
Like, John, I can't hear you exactly. There's 10 million voices right now.
Yeah, John,
they like the song. Yeah, so I think that the word efficiency was mentioned, and I think that's the takeaway here to like kind of step back a little bit on this. the legacy systems of finance, of setting an IPO price, all these different things are definitionally inefficient. They're slower. They're less responsive. And I think what you're seeing here with this perpetual price discovery is that there is a way to do this in a more efficient way, a more secure way, a more scalable way, a more democratized way that brings in a lot more participants. The reason that's important is not just to give people financial access to these, large financial institutions that they want to get exposure to, but it also helps us get a more accurate collective market intelligence around how to properly price something. And that's not something that, despite best efforts, it's not something that people like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs can do. They're never going to be as smart as the collective intelligence of the market. And then I think that the other benefit is that there's continued innovation, right? Because we have these technologies and these tools to be able to offer better products and more accessible products, more scalable, more secure products. It brings in more confident investors. It brings in more of that collective market intelligence, and it gives improved outcomes for all stakeholders. And so that's something I think is really exciting to call out about this is just one instance, one example, but it's very illustrative of a lot of the benefits of digital assets, a lot of the benefits of these new innovations we've seen. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to watch how this plays out for the rest of the day. Wall Street Bets, if you're with us now, the IPO has happened. The SpaceX is live and trading. What's your take? What's your thoughts on where we are this morning?
Woo! What's up, everybody? We're looking good. Wow, Nick O'Neill looks handsome as ever. He's never looked so good. I'm so glad to into that. SpaceX, yeah, it's looking great. Elon's bags are up and to the right. Good for him. It's a great day to be in the markets. Yeah, what are you guys seeing before I go into my expert analysis here?
Well, I think we've been talking about how perps have offered price discovery and access to a lot more market participants than have ever had access before. Wall Street Bets was very oriented around this idea of bringing the people to Wall Street and giving them a chance to participate. What do you think about what perps unlocks and what this does for pre-IPO trading, for after-hours trading, and just bringing more people into this, into participating into this?
Yeah, wow, John, what an amazing question. And look, at Wall Street Bets here, although we're extremely degenerate, we do really care about where the puck is going. And I think there's a lot to be said about why perps have been so successful this cycle and what it actually enables. I think the market and participants, retail has gotten smarter, right? We've been around the block for so long. Retail has gotten smarter. We understand that we don't need, a bajillion L2s. We don't need a bajillion L1s. What we really need, and I think, a core thesis of ours, along with, the intersection of AI and crypto for the next year, what we think is going to be extremely bullish for crypto and blockchain technology is really the intersection of RWAs and tokenization. And I think these real world assets that have trillions of dollars of liquidity coming on chain is really going to be one of the greatest kind of unlocks for crypto and blockchain technology from a mass adoption standpoint, because these assets are already being traded, and now it can happen in a permissionless on-chain 24/7 manner. And I think, overall very, very bullish on what tokenized RWAs, tokenized stocks, tokenized commodities, perps, what all of this enables, because it just creates a more efficient market dynamic and gives real strong purpose, I think, to crypto and blockchain. So we're excited about it. And I think the SpaceX IPO is going to be really interesting. And, we'll see if we're at the top of the market here based on how this performs over the next few weeks.
So maybe just a general question for me, right? Because I think this is super interesting around price discovery. To me, the idea now that, it might actually launch at $175 a share now, that is probably a vindication, right, of crypto as a price discovery tool. And I wonder if that'll just become almost part of the playbook now for IPOs, that, companies will want this kind of price discovery because it's helpful for them, it's helpful for the market. Kind of keen to get everyone's thoughts. Like, is this a validation that there has been a paradigm shift, or is this something else?
Hold on, I want to ask you, Chris, before everyone else answers, is this success for you guys for a product like this? That it's like, listen, that this thing tracked almost down to the cent at where it opened.
I think it is. I'm I'm obviously still very much kind of processing, right, and figuring it out live. But at the end of the day, if you can help markets be more efficient, and if you can provide value, and you can let people know, or give them an indication of what might happen on launch day, and it seems like that's what happened here. There is a tremendous amount of value in that, and there is kind of opportunity that we don't quite know yet what it means, but it feels almost fractal in nature, where you keep zooming in and you keep seeing more opportunities appear. So, I've been in crypto over 10 years now, and I remember sitting in 2015 in an office at a crypto company that I worked at here in Berlin, and every time when CoinDesk would report on some minor bank running some pilot project for blockchain, we'd all punch the air and go, wow, like I can't believe it, right? Like BNP Paribas is doing, they've got 2 people working on their own blockchain, wow. And now here we are, and it's the biggest IPO of probably my lifetime, right? And crypto.
With that in mind, Chris, I'm hearing live from the floor that the president of SpaceX, Gwynne Shotwell, is on the floor of the NASDAQ right now watching this open. What do you think the mood is?
Champagne, right?
I would hope so. I hope they've got mimosas flowing.
I would be drinking champagne if I was there.
We need somebody there. Is that where Pomp is? Is he on the floor there? We need a live stream direct from the front row.
He didn't share his details with us on that, did he?
Yeah, where was he going? Yeah.
It looked like he might be on the way.
I love watching live streams of people celebrating their newfound wealth while I miss out on their opportunity.
Nick, just go back in time and get like a maintenance or janitor job at SpaceX like 15 years ago, man. That's all you got to do.
I need to hunt down one of those lunch ladies. That's what I need.
Yeah, a big part of this as well is the category, right? Like SpaceX, it feels like they're in this category that's obviously future-proof. If anything, it's going to massively scale, or that would be, kind of the idea would be that there's a lot of potential here in the future. I feel like Anthropic and AI, obviously, they are category defining too, but they're in competition with each other. Like SpaceX doesn't really have that, right? So I wonder what that means for the IPOs of OpenAI and Anthropic.
Absolutely. Chris, what was your earlier question for the rest of the crew as well? You're asking about, I think, just about how significant a moment this is for price discovery in crypto.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here he is. We got Elon now.
Going public for the.
He's wearing Jensen's uniform.
You just look so much retro already.
Let me tell you, if people had told me this was gonna happen, I was like, man, you must be smoking some really good crack. I think this company's gonna.
Wow, get the disclaimer up.
I mean, I gave SpaceX less than a 10% chance of succeeding at all, to be clear. In fact, I told people this. I said, look, we're probably going to fail, but we should give it a try, because if we don't, if there's not a new company that enters space, there will never be a truly spacefaring civilization. While the other aerospace companies.
Hey guys, as we're watching this, I just want to give you guys a heads up. I just got off the phone with Star, our CEO and founder, and I convinced him that he should join us for 5 minutes.
Oh, awesome!
And that's very rare, by the way. So I hope you guys can ask him anything. He's basically the brains behind our Perps products. So shortly he'll join, and I think he's better than Elon Musk.
Is his hair as good as yours, Hyder?
Better.
Okay.
Better.
I'm looking forward to
it. That's great. Yeah, I think we're okay with the stream. Now it's just them clapping. This is Elon clapping for himself and everybody else clapping.
We're really happy for him.
Yeah, this is great. All those people there.
I'm glad he used the opportunity to give a shout out to Crack. That was very, very on brand.
Always has to
Don.
say something a little bit crass in some way. He always has to fit that in, no matter what he's doing. And that's pretty amazing. And you know, I found just before we get to start, I find what he said in there is that he gave the company less than a 10% chance of succeeding is really interesting. And also, if you really zoom out, it's like, you know, go back 20 years and it's like, how could somebody even think of you know, investing in space, right? That is not something you could really do. What are you going to buy? NASA? NASA's a government corporation, right? It's like you can't even do that. So it's also, I think, just the shift in the landscape of what you can do now is really fantastic. Hyder, how far out is Star?
I'm messaging him back and forth. He said he just finished working out, not looking so good. I'm like, just join.
Oh, join from the gym, man. Let's see it. Let's see the pump. Let's see the pump for a big day. Okay, great. Well, I mean, we'll probably ask him about building this out as a crypto product as well. So while we wait for him, and we just got a little bit of Elon, what do you want to talk about next? I feel like we're kind of just waiting in anticipation for him. John, what do you think? I feel like you've got some good questions for the crew.
I think it's really remarkable that I think it's still trading. The price discovery is still happening, but I saw a number of 2.35 trillion as a market capitalization for SpaceX. That is a very large IPO, obviously the largest in history, but I think that the second order impacts of this are still going to be rippling through the markets for months. And that's something I'm really curious to see is what people think is going to happen as an impact of this. We've never seen an IPO this big. Can the markets handle this? Is there going to be a demand for liquidity from other places? Nick, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Like, how do you think the markets are going to be able to hold up all these IPOs as, you know, this gets brought out to market, as it goes into these indices, second and third order impacts of having so much capital pulled out by this? Like, what do you think happens here next?
I wish I knew, but I think that I've been just watching. This is like we were kind of discussing it yesterday. It's just unprecedented, like in terms of the amount of money that's just slushing around for each of these different, particularly in the AI market at this point in time. And I guess what we're also seeing, and this is the real question with a lot of it, is the hype actually like justified? And how soon will AI essentially take everybody? Like literally months ago, the assumption was AI is going to eliminate everybody's jobs like imminently. The stocks that the day that Anthropic would roll out a new feature, you'd see basically a whole category of stocks implode, and that happened on a almost weekly basis for a month or two there. And suddenly we're all just like, well, I guess it's done. Like, I guess the window is closed. We don't have an opportunity to literally make money anymore. Sorry, guys, let's wrap it up and go home. We're going to be unemployed within a short period of time. And that sounds like ridiculous, but that's also seems to correspond with how this capital is being allocated right now. Like, all of it is flowing to a company like SpaceX, which, yeah, it's a space trade, but I feel like really it's a corresponding AI trade, and it's an opportunity. It's one of the, you have, obviously, I keep seeing different acronyms circulate around what are the biggest companies, but it's basically Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, and if you want to include SpaceX now because they have Grok, you can throw that in there. And then there, Meta would love to be. I'm like, I debate whether or not like where they fit, although their AI maybe, well, it's not on par even with Grok. I don't know. Their products seem to be lacking in relation to these things. But basically, all the money is also simultaneously going up or being reallocated towards these different products and companies. Crypto, it seems to be actually a loser as a result of that in recent months and over the past year, frankly, where people are just like, hey, we'd much rather allocate all of our money to AI. And it feels like there's maybe potentially an over adjustment to that. So if I am a betting man, but if I were to bet on this, I bet basically I would still keep some allocation towards some of the areas that are just being siphoned out right now, all towards AI. And I don't know where this is going to end up. We saw a similar thing happen many years ago when I mentioned a comment before about the private markets, the transition for something like Facebook was the first company where the employees were able to sell stocks, and there was active secondary markets, and that became an entire like industry that cropped up. So that didn't exist prior to literally Facebook. And I think that we're seeing similar things happen here. And the reason that I just bring that up is that we're seeing there was like money, tons of money, huge investments, funds investing $1 billion on a venture capital fund at that point in time. People are like, what? That we've never seen this before. And now we're seeing the exact same thing again, and it just hasn't stopped. So I don't know if that's a result of just continuously printing money. I don't know if that's like, where is this money coming from? Or is it just being completely reallocated from existing assets? That's something that I don't have a dashboard that I can go look at to be like, and here's how the money is flowing between all these different assets. But it does feel like there's a lot more slushing around, and it's like, where did that come from? We all saw the Monaco F1 meme of all the yachts out in the water. I'm assuming, but at least that's been going around. It's like, where is all this money coming from? And who are these people? And like, can I be one of them? Can I have one of the yachts? Like even a small one?
Yeah. Wall Street Bets, I'd like to bring you in on this conversation because this is something I think a lot of people are wondering is how they get access, how they participate. And we've seen a lot more companies waiting longer and longer to IPO, and the public feeling like they're being locked out by private equity. Obviously, SpaceX just launched a $2.3 trillion market cap. Is there a way that we can get a piece of the yacht, get more access for the public? And what do you think that looks like? What role do perps play in that? What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, again, as you asked earlier, I think perps are massive in terms of really being able to enable more global access in terms of liquidity into these markets. And so we're really stoked about it. Wall Street Bets is renowned for how much we love playing the game of options. And I think perps allows us to kind of experience that with our crypto liquidity as well. And so I think it's all about just, look, for first principles, I think it's all about access. Like, who do you surround yourself with, right? It's like, what are you working on? Who are you with? I think the people that you surround yourself with can be an asymmetric edge to you. There's a book called Market Wizards. If you haven't read it and you have ever touched the markets, I think you should. And I think, I saw a clip with like Thread Guy and like maybe it was the author or one of the people from Market Wizards. And he was talking about how like, back in the day, you could literally, tell if there was alpha or there was news coming out based on how loud the floor was or how loud the floor was getting on Wall Street, right? If you were like a floor above or a floor below. And so, my point of that is if you're close in proximity, if you're in the right places, right, and you're listening to the right conversations, for example, you join this live stream by OKX and Milk Road, and you're, listening to the wise words of Nick O'Neill, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. And so I think it's just about being in proximity in the right areas with the right people, rubbing shoulders, getting out there, being active, talking to people, comparing notes. I really think that that's always going to be an asymmetric edge. And then it's platforms like OKX that enable, global liquidity to enter and democratize access. And so I'm stoked, I think, around the direction that I've been seeing a lot of these exchanges push. Like I said, I think the world and the market is waking up to the fact, like, I actually think right now crypto is obviously undervalued, but I think, like, look, if you buy Bitcoin here, somebody asked me, should I buy Bitcoin yesterday? I said, yeah, like, it is kind of a good time, but you could go down another 50%. So you got to be ready for that. You got to be ready for another 50% drawdown if you're buying Bitcoin today, because we don't know when that liquidity is going to rotate, right? Like Nick said, there's some undervalued sectors. Like now was just at ServiceNow was just at $140. Now it's back at 99. It looks like software is at a little bit of a dump. Like there's opportunity there. but doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to know when it's going to rotate. And so I think the world is really waking up to the fact that like we don't need a billion more altcoins and meme coins and L1s and L2s and all this. What we really need is we need to be able to access more of these opportunities that, you know, you can go buy on Robinhood, but do it through crypto. And Perps is enabling that. And so hopefully Star can join, even though he just got out of the gym. As long as the Perps volume is doing good, he's looking good. So hopefully, you know, we'll see him on here because the volume probably looks good today.
Nick, I want to ask you a question. There's been a lot of talk. Trump has talked about a sovereign wealth fund for the United States, and he's talked about meeting with some of these CEOs of these AI companies and trying to get some kind of a position, perhaps. Bernie Sanders from the left has also talked about the same thing. And there seems to be sort of this populism that says that the public needs ownership, needs access. What do you think happens here? Do you think we're just going to see more adoption of perps and other products that give the public access? Or do you think that the government is going to start taking a position? And like you said, where does all this money come from? It's coming from one place, the Federal Reserve, in one way or another. But what do you think about that movement we've seen? It seems to me a little bit like the Occupy Wall Street movement has evolved to now saying, like, we want an ownership stake here. What are you seeing playing out there? What do you think happens?
Well, I like you mentioning the Occupy Wall Street sort of time frame for this. That's what brought crypto to the forefront, right? And I think that also, well, I don't know if it actually brought it to the forefront, but it helped trigger the launch of Bitcoin. And I think that essentially, yes, there's a populist element here. That's the biggest question with all this. I mean, it comes back to the same thing I was saying about the AI just category as a whole. And that we're just seeing this rapid gap happen between those that essentially work at Anthropic and those who don't. I say Anthropic categorically as though that's representative of all these different companies, because really it does kind of feel like, I don't know, just like, was that even, yeah, that was this week, I guess, when the new Claude model dropped on Tuesday. And so like, suddenly we got access to it and it's like, oh yeah, this thing is actually that like pretty close to as good as they're claiming. And so I think we're like in this place where we're kind of, the market's trying to adjust to what is out there and available. And we're figuring that out, which is the hardest place to be. And that's happening on two sides of things. One is sort of capital and this splitting of the ultra rich and rich, and then the not. And so that's one thing that's happening and it's catalyzing some of these populist movements. I will say, like, you kind of have to watch where that's happening and where that's succeeding. One place I'd almost argue that it's succeeding right now is New York. Mamdani seems like a pretty popular guy from what I like. If you just, he's at the Knicks games. He's like, I'm just like, man, this guy is like wildly relatable while simultaneously advocating for some like what would otherwise be viewed as extremist policies. And I think that I have no idea where the society as a whole falls on this, but I do get sort of the perspective that it is becoming much more widespread. I'm not a political commentator, but I have seen that like populism is happening in both parties. And so the fact that seems to be a force at this moment seems it's more likely to go directionally towards some of the stuff that Bernie Sanders is advocating for. The one thing that I'll throw out there is it just seems like the government is just behind the curve consistently on this. And I think all young people, which I would even categorize myself as right now, I'm 44 and I still view I guess your mind never, like you never fully, you don't really change all that much. But I think that like I would still view that I think a growing percentage of people probably are just like, what is the government doing? Like they can't balance a budget. Like I can do that in 2 seconds. Like we can literally go through and fix and all of these things. So, and I think one of those major elements are a populist viewpoint. And we're living through like one of the most wild times to see how this transition takes place. And it's probably going to be somewhat rocky in terms of seeing, and there's a lot of people that are pissed off. Elon Musk went from being someone that was like just 100% aspirational to just a polarizing figure in the market. And if you look at the comments in response to a lot of the tweets going out right now about this IPO, there's just a lot of people that are like, screw this guy. Now, I don't know when you read X, what percentage are bots and things like that, but that seems to be kind of a popular consensus at this point. And on the product side for OKX and some of these other places, I would imagine for them, they're just looking, well, where is the product demand? You guys have, as the product marketing side of things, Chris, I would imagine like you have access to at least the demographics of people that are interested in these perpetuals products. Maybe you can shed some light in terms of where does that exist? What sort of income do they have? What sort of age bracket are they operating in? Is it 90% male? Is it where are you seeing that market exist? Because that to me feels like the remaining, I don't even want to call it middle class, but the remaining like not ultra wealthy that are like actively trading basically. So I'd be curious from you what that even looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think there is kind of a really kind of broad group of what I would say is like 25 to maybe 45 who are, really thinking about the future and really trying to figure out, how do I build wealth, right? Like, how do I grow? And, IPOs, I think generally the stock market, ETFs are becoming more and more popular, right? They're becoming the chosen vehicle, at least in Europe, for how to build wealth long term, right? So there's like a real connect there between, I think, this kind of group of what I would say it's still male dominated, but definitely I think the ratio of females is increasing as well, because they're thinking about the future too, and they're thinking about how do I build wealth? How do I make sure that when I retire I have enough funds that I can actually retire? And IPOs I think are a great way, and not just IPOs but the stock market, right, is the premier way to do that. And if through crypto you can get exposure, that's I think a really interesting shift that just has not been there in Europe, right? So we launched our derivative product in April, and are going to be launching SpaceX later on today, hopefully in the next 10-15 minutes. I'm kind of anxiously looking at my dashboard, my front end here, to see when it will actually be available. But I fully anticipate that the kind of people that will resonate with that are the kind of people that are actively making decisions about how to build wealth long term, and realizing that they're kind of on their own as well, right? I think that's another kind of thing that's happened with this demographic, is that there's kind of a realization that nobody's coming to save us. It's very much a matter of, okay, we need to take action, we need to have agency, and we need to find ways of finding upside, right? And these kind of opportunities here, like we're talking about today with SpaceX, I think give a really interesting opportunity in that direction, right? So that's kind of my read. I'm very conscious my read is a very European one, right? So curious to hear from you if you think that's kind of very similar in the US, or if it's a different kind of demographic that you're looking at.
I personally do see the same thing. I mean, you're talking about younger people trying to make a living. I'm glad that disclaimer was up, because I was going to ask you, how much of this are you buying? Like, how much SpaceX are you interested in purchasing here?
Well, I think maybe a better question is what happens next. I want to pivot a little bit away from that so we don't get too many disclaimers all over the place. But something I've been wondering, right, is we've seen this IPO price come in at, I've seen it reported $171, $172. Either way, it's far above the underwriter's projection of $135, and it is much closer to what the perps market's priced in. We have seen sort of like a three-legged race between SpaceX, OpenAI, Anthropic to get to IPO first. SpaceX obviously won. Do you guys think we're going to see the same thing play out again with whoever is next between Anthropic and OpenAI? Are we going to see the perps markets get that right again? And how long until we start saying like, hey, these underwriters don't know what they're doing, and go towards using market intelligence and perps intelligence to see that play out? Wall Street Bets, I'm curious your thoughts on this as we see more of these major IPOs scheduled for 2026. What do you think happens? What are you anticipating here?
Yeah, it's tough. I've seen a lot of images, and obviously, I hope this isn't the case, but I've seen a lot of people kind of drawing parallels between now and the 2000 bubble, where there were massive IPOs at the top of 2000, which really marked the top of the overall market structure. And I mean, these are massive, massive liquidity events. I saw one tweet that had basically said that SpaceX was like larger than all the combined IPOs over the past X amount of years. And so I do think, to some degree, we could look back at this in hindsight as it being a top. I do think, another thing that was really interesting that I saw was that, typically it takes 90 days in order for a stock to join like QQQ, for example, and all the rules are kind of being modified or bent to a degree where SpaceX is going to be added to QQQ within the next 14 days. And so what we saw over the last week when SPY drew down from 750s down to 725 and bounced off that 725 level was a lot of funds creating liquidity so that they can actually buy up SpaceX because they need to get shares and exposure for their QQQ funds. And so that period of 90 days where funds would be buying has now been condensed to 14 days. So there's going to have to be a lot of buy pressure that's coming in. So like you see all this sentiment of like, oh, retail's going to get dumped on. I actually think over the first couple of weeks, there's going to be a lot of institutional buying. I mean, like, retail's not going to be the one carrying an IPO of this size. And so, you always kind of have to be wary. Peter Thiel talks about in 0 to 1. I think everybody, is familiar with Peter Thiel. And if you're not, I think you should, go do some research on him. But, Peter Thiel, Founders Fund, Facebook, Palantir, all that Meta, he talks about in 0 to 1.
Oh, wow. They got to him. Cut him off.
Oh, disaster.
Peter Thiel cut him off, man. He came in and was like, no, enough of that.
I think he was making a great point about inclusion in composite indices. I think that's going to drive a real diversity, I would expect, of retail demand, because a lot of people own these indices without really realizing them. They're quite passive. So a lot of people are going to have SpaceX indirectly added to their portfolios. And I think one of the dynamics that I'll be watching for is this tug of war between this early rush of retail interest today and then what happens when these indices are forced to buy SpaceX in the next 2 weeks. How do you think that's going to play out, Nick? I see you shaking your head.
Just people are going to get absolutely wrecked. I mean, yeah, supposedly industry and indexes were supposed to save crypto. How's that working out right now? I mean, I feel like who am I supposed to thank for the price action that I've experienced over the past year as my portfolio has imploded? I think that the overall thought that a lot of these, you're completely accurate, and I think that it drives demand. I think price is completely independent of the actual holdings of overall people's portfolios, and that's where I think that it's misrepresentative oftentimes when people see people discuss it as simple supply and demand. I think maybe the whole pump that we saw in like Bitcoin, for example, could have been literally driven by that transition, by a lot of these institutions buying, but now they've bought. And now the price is back to like floating essentially. And so you now get a reset of where that price happens. These sort of like moments where you see a rush of people flooding in is generally a good time to start kind of moving out. And that's something that I feel deeply kind of about this moment, is that we're seeing just a lot. I mean, congrats to Elon for being the first to cross the trillionaire race. But outside of that, I'm like, okay, let's like be pragmatic about this. And I think that's something that I have significant concerns about the market being able to sustain a lot of these things. One of the gentlemen on the show yesterday came in and talked about how he was literally essentially effectively degenning $100,000 into the SpaceX IPO, looking for a 50% flip today. It seems like he's getting his 20% flip. So congrats to him, I guess. But I think that overall, this is going to be a net drag on the market and what Wall Street Bets was saying, who I also happen to know his personal name, but I guess we're not doing that. But I basically, as he was suggesting, I think that, effectively, I think that this does have corresponding indicators of bubbly activity. It's just really consolidated in a couple of companies. It's not like there's yeah.
Can I slow that down and play it back? I want to check I'm understanding this correctly. So what I heard you just say, Nick, is that we're going to see a lot of retail get added into SpaceX indirectly through composite funds because it's so well capitalized. SpaceX is now, the biggest IPO ever. It's going to hit all these composite index, driving more demand. You think that could fall off, that we're getting a little too bubbly, frothy. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, once everybody's allocated, even if Elon master planned this entire IPO and now suddenly everyone's 401k is in there and he really figured out the best way for everyone's dollars to flood to his company, there is some terminal point where we hit, okay, that's done. And now all of the money is allocated. Now what happens? And the stock market, which is holistically goes down sometimes, and it goes down substantial amounts, and that everyone's allocated. So it's not like suddenly a new trillions of dollars just appeared out of nowhere that's going to buy the stock market today. And so I think that at some point, basically you run through the market, you run through all of these different tiers of capital. Michael Saylor has done a great job of that as well, of running through every single category of the market to get capital so he can buy Bitcoin. He's not launching new products right now. So that's actually what we're seeing. And so, yeah, I think we just stop. There's going to be an endpoint here. And I don't know when it is. I don't know the day. I can't put that in, I have no category, but I don't see, I see that we're at the, this has been one of the fastest moving markets that we've, and maybe the fastest moving market we've ever seen historically, like the AI category, which is really LLM category. It's incredible to watch, but I feel like there's going to be a little bit of a hangover at some point here. It'll all reconcile and innovation is still going to occur. And yeah, we may indeed all lose our jobs. It's just not going to happen this week. And I don't think it's going to happen this month.
Yeah, they'll always need you, Nick. They'll always need you. This nobody can, no LLM or anything could replace what you're doing right now with us.
To provide such in-depth commentary that the market is demanding.
So one thing I want to build on that Nick said is that this is the fastest moving market we've ever seen. It's also, I think, the slowest moving market that we'll ever see again, because these technologies and the adoption of them are only accelerating. The chairman of the SEC in the United States has said that in 2 years, he wants to tokenize basically the entire Western financial system. So capital formation is going to become a much more efficient, scalable, democratized, fast, global, and just really quick thing. And it's going to become even more powerful and market moving. Something I'm really interested to see about this is, I've said several times, the second and third order impacts of this. We're seeing other assets selling off, precious metals, tech, other things selling off. And it seems to be liquidity capital being pulled from other markets into this. It reminds me a lot. This is probably bringing up some bad memories for people, but it reminds me a lot of when Trump and Melania launched their meme coins, and it just sucked all the liquidity out of the Solana meme market. It's a little bit like that, but for the higher global equities market. Is kind of like what it feels like. But I'm interested to see how central banks respond in terms of meeting these rising demands for liquidity, because a lot of leaders of nations see these technologies and these companies as being vital for the success of their nations, for the continuing prosperity of their economies, and sort of like make or break, life or death. This is something we've been talking about a lot at Milk Road, is that there's a lot of national security riding on these companies, these technologies, digital assets, and artificial intelligence and so forth. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. Kevin Warsh has his first FOMC meeting as chair of the Federal Reserve in less than a week. are they going to have to meet these liquidity demands? How are they going to do that? Because, the way they do that matters, right? Like in the past, the Fed might have just bought bonds off the open market to supply liquidity. But maybe that doesn't meet the demands today. And there's going to be different trade-offs in terms of what policy path they pursue, not just at the Fed, but at the Bank of Japan, the People's Bank of China. So I think all of these nations are kind of feeling these rising demands for liquidity, this speed and velocity of capital formation, and the democratization of all of this, and then realizing a lot more is riding on this. This is kind of like an economic Cold War. And again, not to get political, but these things matter a lot. And in the past, you would say like, oh, it's just a stock IPO. There's a lot more at stake here, and making sure that the rest of the market doesn't starve for liquidity is a big concern of all of these nations and their central banks. So I think that's what I'm watching for to see here. This is, a historic moment today for sure. The second and third order impacts will continue to play out throughout the year. And I think that the velocity of capital formation is going to continue to accelerate. I think perps, we talked about this before, but perps play a huge role in that. Wall Street Bets, anything you want to add on this? You got cut off earlier. I want to bring you back in here. Hopefully you're back with us again. But yeah, how do you see this velocity of capital formation, this acceleration playing out? What role does digital assets, perps play in that? Share a little bit about your thoughts on here and what you're seeing.
Yeah, look, I'm glad Nick kind of finished my sentence because he knew where I was going with it, in terms of the hangover of the market. I think the markets were trying to shut me down because they didn't want to hear me say that. So they cut me off. I did think, one thing that I saw that was really interesting was that, there was this loan that OpenAI was basically, in talks with SoftBank about, and there was a $10 billion margin loan. It actually stalled out and went from 10 billion down to 6 billion. And it's still, I believe, stalling out unless that had changed. And so I thought that was really interesting because, there's less margin being given out. And so I think that's like a signal to kind of just, be paying attention to, and then in terms of today being a historic day, I think it absolutely is. And I think this is going to be a core memory for me that, we were on this OKX live stream with 50,000 people here. And we'll never forget all of your guys' beautiful faces, Melinda, Chris, LG, John, Nick. Really, really great to be on here with you guys. John, what was the exact question about the perps that you were asking?
Well, I think what I'm interested in is the velocity of capital formation, right? Because this technology of perpetual futures, it democratizes access, but it also means that the market can be much quicker, much more responsive, and reallocate capital quickly. And then Anthropic and OpenAI are coming in behind this. How does that play out? Where are we going to see capital moving then? It seems like things are just going to keep accelerating, and I'm curious what you think happens as that all plays out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, sometimes the way that I look at the stock market is like, imagine like you were literally next to a river and there's literally trillions of dollars just moving up and downstream this river, right? And you can't like always tell how strong the current's going to be. And basically what traders are doing is they're taking a bucket and they're just dumping it into this river, and they're hoping that they put that bucket in with more, and then like, with they put a little bit of water in there so it's a little bit heavy, right? And then they're pouring it into this river, and they're hoping that they can pull out more than what they went in with, right? But they can also come out with less. And so I think definitely there's going to be a lot more liquidity that can come. And like, even just like how much stable, like there's trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars in these stable coins, right? And so there's all this extra liquidity that's being unlocked into the markets through perps. And so I think it allows for more volatility. Traders make money on volatility. So I think it can be good for traders and savvy traders who play both sides of the market. But, we're going to be entering the most volatile time of market history. And I think as long as Trump's in office, we're going to see, crazy amounts of volatility. I mean, how many times have we seen, oh yeah, Trump is saving the market. No, Trump's killing the market. It's like, we keep on oscillating between, these extremes. And I think that's going to continue to be the case because as there's more liquidity, it's sharper ups, sharper downs. We keep on getting these headlines that, oh, the market's added more money to, in history, trillions of dollars up. And then it's, oh yeah, the market has dumped more than ever, trillions of dollars down. And so I think you just got to be a little bit more cognizant. And, for traders, you have opportunities because traders make money on volatility. So, you can look at it from two sides here, but I definitely would be a little bit cautious. The Buffett indicator is at all-time highs. Warren Buffett's sitting on a ridiculous amount of cash. And so it really just all depends on if you're a trader, if you're a long-term investor, and kind of what your thesis is. And I will be taking all of Nick's financial advice. And he has too much power. He said that he can dox me if he wants to, but he won't. So that was clever.
Yeah, you better watch your mouth, dude.
You know what's funny is when, oh, go ahead, Melinda.
I was just thinking for a lot of investors in these markets, I mean, they're relying on these funds. Like they may aspire to be long-term holders, but it is quite scary to see those wicks and sudden drops. Do you think the volatility that we're seeing is a feature or a bug when it comes to traditional equities markets? You know, SpaceX is entering a category that is, for a lot of investors, their source of income. Feature
Wait, sorry.
or bug?
SpaceX is entering a market where what's their source of income?
Investment earnings. I'm thinking there's a lot of people's retirements that are going to be in like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100. Is this volatility going to be a feature or a bug for those investors?
It's going to be a feature, and they're gonna not like it. That's a. I was saying, John had mentioned it, and this is a roundabout way of answering that question. But John had mentioned how I keep hearing the word liquidity associated with all of this, and he had mentioned that in the context of the Federal Reserve and printing money, et cetera. And I'm like, yeah, the Federal Reserve is going to end up literally buying SpaceX. That's where we're headed at this point in time. But in all honesty, I think what you're talking about with this volatility, I think the average consumer is becoming used to it. The hard part of that is it's impacting them substantially because the average consumer is not trained on how to handle volatility. Yeah. Volatility is part of the market, but there's a lot of people that I see who are operating in wildly volatile markets, like meme coins, for example, yet they're allocating 90+% of their portfolio into these places. Perpetuals volatility is inherently a feature because perpetuals have margin. And so all of these things, a lot more people are operating in areas where things are swinging a lot quicker. They're not trading bonds. And so I think that that element, although bonds are becoming volatile also, but I think that element of things is an unfortunate reality and feature of the markets increasingly. And we're just moving towards a world where that is far more common and the norm. And so it's like, and we're seeing products materialize and manifest as a result of that, like the perpetuals, which I think are just reflective of where we are today as a whole. And so that's one of the things that makes things more difficult, because when you talk about when we talk about the gap from AI, I think these financial markets are also a contributor in many ways to some of the gaps, because we've moved towards a world of gambling, basically. And so and a lot of people are getting completely wrecked. Yeah, I mean, hopefully we have more games like the Knicks game the other night. But I was going to say that that you had 0.5% chance of that working out. That's as volatile as you can get.
Yeah, and Nick, on that point, it's like, dude, I've never seen, like, because of how sharp the ups and downs are, and I think Melinda, you were saying this earlier as well. It's like it's really easy to get shaken out right now. And there's this, it seems like we have like a quant in the chat here, Jarius Pierre Toussaint. Shout out to you. I mean, he's giving some really good insights. He just said here, I agree with Nick, volatility requires extreme training and experience, because it's just, it's going to be so much harder to really navigate these markets because of how sharp the ups and downs are.
I mean, that feels like a major shift for me too. Like, we spent a lot of time talking about kind of perps and what those tell us about capital formation and retail participation. I think this volatility is a second story. Like, I think we'll be talking about that, for weeks to come. I expect to hear it on Milk Road soon.
Yeah, well, so I think what comes to mind for me when you say this, you said, is this a feature or a bug? And my answer is yes. It depends on which side of the volatility you're on, right? Like, enabling all these technologies brings democratized access. It brings speed and efficiency of capital formation, but that capital can move quickly as well. And I think, something that came up in a lot of conversations after the October 10th flash crash is the need for some sort of like, I think broadly speaking, what we've seen is sort of a hybridization between some of TradFi and some of digital assets and crypto. And as that evolves, I think there's a lot of things that both sides can learn from and benefit from each other, right? Because in traditional finance, Wall Street exchanges, you have things like circuit breakers to stop flash crashes. You have exchange insurance to like backstop things so that people don't get completely wrecked on certain things. So I think that it's a feature and a bug, but there are lessons learned from Wall Street from years of experience that can be incorporated into some of these tools that are emerging from the innovations of digital assets so that we can sort of have our cake and eat it too, right? Like protect investors, make sure that people's life savings don't get liquidated in a flash crash because of speed of capital formation that's been unlocked, but then also still enable this innovation and the power of it and bring that into the markets as well. So I think there's a lot to be learned from both sides, and that hybridization I think is still being worked out. Product market fits being developed, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's really exciting to see how this emerges and how it evolves as it plays out. But yeah, we talk about this a lot on the road because it's something that is like actively happening in real time, and the consequences of it like really hit people where they live, and like it really matters to people. It's not just nerdy wonk speak. It's something that's really important.
Yeah. I very quickly wanted to say, just because I got to jump here, I got a hard stop. I wanted to give everybody their flowers here. Melinda, Chris, LG, John, not you, Nick, everybody else, all the team, everybody who put this together. You guys are honestly extremely professional. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of teams in the space. Haven't met many like you guys. And honestly, please keep up the amount of like product that you guys have been shipping, the features. I had a chance to be onboarded to the OKX wallet and applications recently, and I've been having a blast. You guys have been iterating on any type of feedback that we share. And then shout out to this chat. Seriously, I've been glued to it. You guys have been giving some really good insights in here. And thank you for spending the time with us. This is definitely gonna be a core moment for me. And so core memory. So I appreciate you all. Happy Friday. God bless, and hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Enjoy. Thank you.
WSB. Thank you. I want to take a second just to show some appreciation for John, because what happened about 10 or 15 minutes ago, nobody really noticed, is that Nick was like, listen, crypto sucks. We suck. We should have just been doing all this other stuff the whole time. And then hold on. And then John comes in. And if you guys, and I got to plug our own channels too. If you guys want a dose of this on the daily, on the weekly, you can tune into Milk Road and Milk Road Macro, or you can just follow at Bitcoin Jesus on X, which is John's handle. And if you want reasons to be bullish on crypto long term, there's nobody better than John right now, because everybody gets down about, Bitcoin went down again, or this thing, there's a scam here, who knows what's going on. And the one bull that I think has the absolute best view on this stuff is John. This guy is a former Wall Streeter. Okay, and he has chosen to be in crypto. He's chosen to be in the streets with us, and he tracks everything that is going on, and he understands what is about to happen in crypto and this adoption that's coming, and how all these companies are hiring as many people as they can as digital asset managers to come and be part of this industry with us. So maybe you're sad about price action. Maybe you're sad that SpaceX is opening at a higher valuation than all Bitcoin, or whatever your problem is. But if you want a daily dose of positivity and reasons to zoom out, John's your guy.
One thing I was gonna, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, LG put his finger on something I've been saying a lot, which is the divergence between this huge institutional bull run and fundamental value of digital assets strengthening and accelerating, and retail sentiment diverging. And I think that's the alpha, that's the opportunity, right? Is like to not get depressed, distracted, or deflated, but to really lean in, because that's what institutions are doing. That's what real capital, real money is doing. So that's a huge opportunity. So I've been trying to encourage our audience to stay locked in. I say at the end of every stream, stay safe, stay educated, stay bullish. There's a huge amount of opportunity. It's just maybe not the most euphoric moment right now in the digital asset.
Oh wow, man. He also got cut off. He's back. Okay, Peter
John, can you double click for me on something you said earlier? You mentioned that the rules have shifted a bit for composite index inclusion for SpaceX, that they've shortened the observation window before SpaceX is going to get added. Can you break down what that window is for and why there was motivation to shorten it in this instance?
I think it's just demand. Like the IPO is 4x oversubscribed. Everybody is breaking their neck to try to get into this thing. I think that a lot of people want to be able to say that they have an allocation, that they have a return. The window is usually to allow for the market to find its kind of settle, find a price, stabilize. And they try to do these things in a measured pace and in a measured way to avoid radical swings of price action, and just like stability and general due diligence before they do these things. Obviously people can look into this more for more detail on that. But I think that the reason for accelerating it and expediting it is just this overwhelming demand, right? And I think that because so much capital, so much attention is on a lot of these companies that have been private equity for so long and pre-IPO for so long, now that they're available, the demand is basically insatiable. So they're trying to be flexible and accommodating to bring those in. I think, the QQQ will be first, but then there's also projections that by the end of the year, within 6 months, it could also be included in the S&P 500. So we'll see how these things play out. But I think it's going to continue to be something where, because there's such high demand for SpaceX, for Anthropic, for OpenAI, a lot of the regular norms and considerations are going to be like kind of set aside for this, because they're going to view it as an anomaly and sort of a need to accelerate the process. You can make arguments that acceleration brings with it additional risks. But I think that, it is fair also to say that this is an anomaly, and it's not a usual IPO. It's not a usual market participant. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that's kind of what's driving the changes. And the reasons for them is just best practices, safeguards, due diligence. So I'm sure they'll be doing plenty of scrutiny to make sure that they do this in a proper way. But I think that's what's driving that right now.
I wanted
sorry, go for it.
I just wanted to back up before we get too far from Mr. Wall Street Bets leaving the stream. I wanted to back up what he said about the product, because honestly, so I'm now like a VIP customer of OKX, and I have whatever my the person who's there. Genuinely, the product is the best one that I've used in the crypto space as a whole. Obviously, you guys are beyond just crypto at this point in time, and that's what's part of the stream is about is the fact that you guys are focused on what's an expanding financial market. And I think there's a lot of convergence amongst a lot of the fintech companies at the forefront, including OKX. But yeah, I mean, the product side that you guys have been rolling out is quite impressive. And the standard of which you're setting for those products is top tier. I've operated with other markets, exchanges. It's unfair to call you guys one of those, because I don't think that that's what the product is. But that's that's definitely an origin story, I would say. And so yeah, I just wanted to back him up on that statement, which is I genuinely love the fucking product. Like I think it's a great product.
Parental advisory needed. Right at the end. Get the parental advisory out here.
Or what I can do what you did, LG, and just promote my account. Hold on one second. So when you're looking for serious market commentary, there's no one more educated than myself. I actually agree. John, we need a mixture of people. Like, I provide a much more entertaining bent to the commentary, which is what I've always angled for. But John has presented some like actually genuinely insightful stuff, and I need people like John so I can actually say something that's meaningful in between the complete nonsense that I spent.
I want to react.
Nonsense. That was an awesome conversation. Thank you all so much. Before we move to formally wrap up, just wanted to remind our viewers that none of what you heard was investment advice or an offer or solicitation to buy, sell, or hold digital assets. Ex-perps contracts involve leverage. Trading can result in complete loss. This is not a SpaceX security or ownership interest and is not affiliated with or endorsed by SpaceX. Guest views are their own, and not all products are available in all regions. I'm Melinda from OKX. I'm delighted you could all join us today. Thank you, LG, John, Nick, Chris. This was fantastic.
Let's run it back for the next two. Let's run it back.
I'm down.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy IPO day.